Facile formulas, catchy slogans, 10-step programs, and quick fixes too often dominate today's management training programs. But in organizations, as in all of life, human behavior is seldom predictable, and business dilemmas do not easily lend themselves to gimmicks or simplistic answers. In Management of the Absurd, psychologist, educator, and former CEO Richard Farson presents a series of management paradoxes designed to challenge conventional wisdom and encourage managers to re-examine their assumptions about effective leadership. Good morning, this is Ron. It is Saturday, the 25th of November. Welcome to Storytime. And today we're reading the final chapter of this book, Management of the Absurd, chapter 33. My advice is, don't take my advice. Advice is cheap, so the old adage goes. It means that not only is advice worth little, it also costs nothing to give. It is the simplest, quickest response to make when confronted with a problem. It addresses a situation without actually dealing with it. It is easier than understanding, than listening and analyzing. We know this intuitively. Most of us give ourselves good advice every day, but seldom act upon it. As the old farmer told the young government agricultural agent, "Son, I already know how to be twice as good a farmer as I am." My exploration of the paradoxes of leadership is deliberately meant not to provide advice, but to deepen understanding of the issues that managers face every day. In fact, I would be disappointed if the precepts presented in these pages were perceived as advice. They don't work that way. An invitation to reflect. First of all, these precepts, taken at face value, would lead us to behave in a manner quite the opposite from what we've been taught all our lives, from what we are expected to do, and what we really can't help doing, even if we try not to. When I say praising people does not motivate them, the advice one might infer is, don't praise people. That, of course, is not what I mean. Besides, it would be impossible to follow. Try it. You probably couldn't resist the impulse to praise for even an hour. Even if it were desirable to avoid praising people, it is a behavior too deeply ingrained in us to change much. Second, because my paradoxical precepts are also true in their opposite, it's difficult to know when we should act upon one or the other. When I say that we should communicate less or that technology always backfires, I don't mean that we shouldn't communicate or use technology. We must consider both sides of these precepts at once to arrive at a fuller understanding of the consequences of our potential actions. When I say that we should keep an eye on the invisible, or that once you find a management technique that works, give it up, or that the best thing for people is to experience a calamity, I'm setting up a somewhat impossible situation to challenge your thinking. In some instances, my precepts seem selfish, or perhaps even immoral. Keep your own morale high. Do things that will make you like other people rather than make them like you. Is that advice? I think of it rather as an invitation to analyze more closely your own motivation and the complexities of your relationships with others. But the basic reason why my precepts are impossible to translate into simple advice is that challenging one's approach to leadership and organizational life is not that easy. Faced with the absurd, managers either change from a profound understanding of a new way of thinking about these issues, or they don't. Some things can't be achieved by going through the motions, and developing a genuine appreciation for the paradoxical nature of human affairs is one of them. You have to reflect on it. Only then will it become a valuable adjunct to your own leadership style. In support of thinking. Most management books close with suggestions for what the manager should do differently, usually presented as formulas or checklists of actions to take. We are, after all, an action-oriented society, managers particularly, but there will be no such prescriptions for actions here. As I'm sure you've gathered by now, I regard any demand for action as part of the problem, not the solution. What we need when confronting a problem or a predicament is not quick action based upon a first glimpse, but rather a careful consideration of all the issues involved, no matter how paradoxical or absurd. Such a process can lead to a new perspective on the nature of genuine leadership. Doing should follow thinking, even though thinking may make us uncomfortable because it is riddled with so many paradoxes and dilemmas. Perhaps it is more like stewing than thinking. Therefore, I deliberately end here. Not with advice, but by returning to the unresolved paradoxes that truly characterize the human condition. Waking up Ludwig. In music, there is a very common sequence of chords known as the 2-5-1 sequence, referring to the second, fifth, and first notes in a scale. When the chords are played in this sequence on a piano, the listener experiences a feeling of comfortable closure when the third and final chord is played. If, however, only the first two are played, the listener experiences a tension that comes from the sequences not being completed. Legend has it that Frau von Beethoven, Ludwig's mother, used to wake him up when he was a little boy by playing 2-5 and not then playing the final 1 chord. Even though asleep, he would experience that missing chord and become so disturbed that he would have to get up to complete the sequence. With my book ending at this point, you may feel a bit like little Ludwig. Perhaps that is appropriate. However, because the next notes are yours to play. And that's the end of the book, Management of the Absurd by Richard Farson, and Paradoxes in Leadership. And I will be making my comments and whatnot on my blog, www.ronaldhardgrove.blogspot.com. And coming up tomorrow, I'm going to start a series of reading some lectures that have been made by various individuals to Hillsdale College, and they're recorded in a pamphlet known as Imprimis. And so I will be doing that. I'll do one of those tomorrow, and then I got 4 or 5 of them, so I'll probably take us through next week. But yeah, it's Management of the Absurd. I'd gotten this book many years ago when I was thinking that there are shortcuts in life. And so I was always looking to new philosophies, particularly Eastern philosophies, for such shortcuts. And this book seemed to be shortcut material. You know, I don't have to go and get a master's degree in management in order to be a good manager. I can just read this book, and I will be able to manage better intuitively. So, not the case. Reality exists, and we have to do what reality wants us to do, and that means that sometimes we can be intuitive about things, and sometimes we can't. So, in any case, until tomorrow, when I'll be again reading from a copy of Imprimis, thank you for joining me, and have a great day.